Right after we all started believing in a 5th title for Max Verstappen in the 2025 Formula 1 season, it became clear over the Mexican Grand Prix weekend that it wasn't going to be as straightforward as we hoped it would be. A lot of things went wrong, which made a positive outcome look almost impossible. But Max Verstappen wouldn't be Max Verstappen if he didn't conjure up another crazy magical drive to keep him in contention. I'm not gonna lie, I thought it was all over. Yes, we were all so hopeful after the fantastic race Max Verstappen won in Austin last week. The McLarens weren't dominant and Max drove to a comfortable, dominant victory at COTA. So I figured he could easily do that again in Mexico, a race he had won 5 times before. Well, it turned out to be a little different. Verstappen missed FP1 because Arvid Lindblad did a mandatory free practice session in the RB21. He set a quicker time than Yuki Tsunoda. I don't know what to make of that. Then in FP2 the car had a good pace over 1 lap but was nowhere on the long runs. Verstappen complained a lot about sliding and lack of grip. This isn't unusual in Mexico as the track needs to get rubbered in. But it was clear Red Bull needed to work their magic to get the boys to fix things overnight, something they are quite good at normally. Well, they managed to fix the long run pace somewhat at the cost of the pace over 1 lap. This was quite clear on Saturday in FP3. Max tried a different wing but reverted back to the normal wing for qualifying. Max Verstappen was not happy. During the quali it became apparent he was off the pace compared to Lando Norris, who had blistering pace. The Ferraris were fast too, and so were the Mercedes cars. He made it to Q3, at least that went okay. But in the last run he set the 4th fastest time, which wasn't too bad, and then George Russell, Mr. Saturday, came along and just about pipped him. So it was a P5 start. The only upside was that he was 2 places up from his title rival Oscar Piastri, who had an even worse weekend. Verstappen lowered everyone's expectations in interviews after the quali, as he didn't think he could move up if he was slower than the few cars behind him. Now, Max and I, we're Dutchies, and we tell things like it is. I also trust Dutch people to tell it like it is, no beating around the bush. Therefore, I didn't have much hope for a good result. I would have been happy with a P5 to be honest, and then perhaps some misfortune for the McLarens or something. If that all didn't happen, then I realized it might be over for Verstappen and his championship. It had been a while since I've been tense before a Max Verstappen race. He didn't have the fastest car for many races, and only lately he's been back into the fight. They lined up on that long straight, getting ready to go racing. Verstappen had said he would try something only if the opportunity would arise, but he also noted that there might not be much of a point in risking it all to be overtaken again later. So that was a relief. He wasn't going to try anything crazy. Wrong. He had a great start, got alongside Leclerc and Hamilton, who were almost alongside Lando Norris. They were 4 wide just before the turn. Verstappen had to brake on the outside of the track where it was very dusty, so he couldn't make the turn. He cut over the grass, did a bit of rallying like his father does, and then slotted back onto the track safely in front of the 2 Ferraris. He quickly realized he had gained an advantage by going off track, so he let Hamilton and Leclerc pass, but not Russell, as he had already passed him on the first straight. Russell moaned and pleaded that it wasn't fair, but the FIA didn't listen. Charles Leclerc and a few others had also cut over the grass a bit, but nobody cared. Well, Lewis Hamilton cared, as he was slightly ahead of Leclerc when Charles went off track, but it wasn't like he had overtaken him, so Charles stayed ahead. This was the first boiling point. The next boiling point happens at lap 6. Max Verstappen made a lunge on his old nemesis Lewis Hamilton in turn 1 after the straight. Team LH doesn't agree, but that was a tidy, precise move from Max. He was just about ahead at the apex, making it his corner, and then let the car roll softly into the side of car 44, who didn't want to give an inch. Rubbing is racing, baby. In the next turn, Hamilton was feeling a little sore perhaps, but he pushed Verstappen off track, so he cut over the grass and continued on his way. Then Hamilton tried to overtake Verstappen again in the next turn, but locked up, took to the grass and failed to take the small escape road that drivers had to take in cases like this. Lewis then continued on his way like nothing happened, even though he cut a huge chunk of the track and gained like 4 seconds of an advantage. So the stewards had a lot of work sorting this out after this was all noted. It took a long time before all the notifications came. For Verstappen, there was no further action for the lap 1 turn 1 incident. He had given up his advantage by letting the Ferraris pass. The overtake on Hamilton, with the tiny collision, was fine too in the eyes of the stewards, because he was ahead on the apex. Now Hamilton was also under investigation for a few things, and actually got away with most. The stewards realized he couldn't make it to the little escape road, and because of the little collision between him and Max, where both of them continued, he didn't get a penalty for that, even if he didn't leave enough room. He did get a 10-second penalty for leaving the track and gaining an advantage. He should have slowed down, or even better, he should have allowed Verstappen back past. The FIA leave these things to the team, and if they don't, 10 seconds is the punishment. This was introduced to prevent people from getting past and copping the 5-second penalty it used to be. Okay, that's that. I forgot to mention that Verstappen had started on mediums, which was a pretty shitty tyre, but he made it work. Verstappen kept setting lap times close to what Norris was doing in front. Max did lose a position earlier during the fight with Hamilton to young Oliver Bearman, the rookie surprise of this race. We're so blessed with these youngsters this season. Everyone around Verstappen swapped their softs for mediums, but he could keep going until lap 36. He was pitted onto softs. At this stage, it wasn't clear if he would do a 1 or a 2 stop. We heard a conversation between GP and his team that we weren't supposed to hear. Or maybe it was on purpose. We'll never know. At this stage, I was worried, as Max was P8 or something, and he had to fight his way through a bunch of drivers again to get a good result. He said to GP that he was going to save his tyres, so he'd have some tyres left in the end. He made short work of Lewis Hamilton and then set after the other drivers. Then a lot of drivers in front of him pitted again. This was great news as he climbed up and was third suddenly. I was afraid that Bearman would set after him to grab third, but he had Piastri behind him to worry about, and Verstappen did have a good consistent pace. Every lap his deficit on Leclerc, which was 13 seconds, kept coming down, and it became clear we would have an epic showdown in the last 3 laps. A Leclerc versus Verstappen fight is always fun. Unfortunately, Crashy Carlos, who was only fast in the pit lane that race, spun and parked his car neatly out of the way. The FIA still set the virtual safety car in motion, so overtaking wasn't allowed. They did give the track a green light again, but Leclerc and Verstappen had almost finished by then. It turned out that the Williams started smoking, and that always signals a virtual safety car. I can't believe a Williams car screwed Max like that. A third place was still way better than I expected, and Max Verstappen is still in the title fight. Max Verstappen gained 5 points on Oscar Piastri, so 40 points are 35 points now. He lost ground to Lando Norris. Lando outscored Max by 10 points, so their difference is 36 points now. We still have 4 races to go and 2 sprint races. Plenty of points to be won or lost. I'm dreaming of another wet race in Brazil, with both McLaren struggling and Max repeating his 2024 masterclass. I'm hoping the media will start a frenzy between Norris and Piastri to get these guys so riled up they don't know what's left or right anymore. And McLaren has to deal with it all, trying desperately to be fair, while screwing both drivers over, until BOOM! Max Verstappen wins the title. I thought Max Verstappen's title chances were nearly over, but it's all still wide open. The option to subscribe is also wide open. Take care now. Doei doei.